student of the law, and so before he became governor, he studied the Florida State Constitution to learn all of the contours and the parameters. He knows what he is doing, and he will not do anything when he doesn't know that he does not have the legal backing.
Lawsuits are expected, but Ellis says the government has the legal authority in this situation. There's still time to adopt a campus for Collegiate Day of Prayer. Chris Woodward continues our coverage.
The Collegiate Day of Prayer is held on the last Thursday of February. Organizers are wanting believers nationwide to pray for campuses in their town or state, as well as those they graduated from or maybe have children attending. Organizers are also encouraging Christians to pray for campuses in other countries. Talking about this on American Family Radio's Today's Issues program, Dr. Ray Pritchard of Keep Believing Ministries said it is vital that believers pray for college students.
The colleges and universities of America, that's where the leaders of tomorrow are going to come from. The doctors, the lawyers, the politicians, the artists, the authors, the great athletes, the engineers, the builders. That's the leaders of tomorrow, of the next 30, 40, 50 years. They are in colleges and universities today.
For more on how you can participate and adopt a campus for a Collegiate Day of Prayer, visit afa.net. I'm Chris Woodward.
And finally, dock workers on the U.S. East and Gulf Coast have overwhelmingly approved a 6-year contract, averting the threat of a strike that could have crippled the economy. The contract calls for a 62% pay hike over 6 years, and it would lift hourly wages from $39 an hour to $63 an hour. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
The American Family Association, informing, equipping, and activating to transform American culture.
After the resurrection, when Jesus was given all authority in heaven and on earth, he commissions his disciples to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything Jesus commanded them.
We at the American Family Association seek to aid the church in our Great Commission.
Welcome to Today's Issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day.
And indeed, welcome to this Wednesday edition of Today's Issues. Fred Jackson here. The regular cast, that being Tim and Ed, are away today. I believe Tim is back tomorrow. Yes. And I think he'll have probably a lot to say about his Holy Land tour. The folks are just getting back from there, and I'll tell you what, I will echo what Tim has said many times through the years, and others have said, you're never the same when you come back from Israel. As a Christian, you see all of those places that you've read about in Scripture, and I don't know, it just comes alive, and as you move along in your daily Bible reading, your studies, and that sort of thing, you can say, I've been there. Been to Jerusalem, and been to the Mount of Olives, and all of those places. And anyway, with me today to cover the news of today, we have Chris Woodward.
Good morning.
Yes. We have Tony Vitagliano.
Good morning.
And we have Ray Pritchard. And Ray, I know you've been to the Holy Land a numbers of times.
You know, just as you were saying that, Fred, I was thinking about Capernaum. Been there. Nazareth. Yeah. Been there. Bethlehem. Been there. There's no place on earth like Israel. It is the land of the Bible. And friends, if you have an opportunity, please go. It will change the way you look at life. It'll change the way you read the Bible. Because when I read the Bible, now read Bethlehem, Fred, been there.
You've been there.
You know, Mount of Olives, been there.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. What really surprised me, some of this, we read about Jerusalem, you read about the Mount of Olives, but it's like just a stone throw away. When you're at the Mount of Olives, I mean, the city of Jerusalem, the Eastern Wall is right there. I remember my first trip, and this goes back to 1984. The first night we spent after arriving there in Tel Aviv, we spent the night in Tiberias. And, of course, it's right on the Sea of Galilee. And the next morning, I woke up quite early before the sun got up. And I walked down to the shore, and there were fishermen coming in, and they were in dories, rowboats, and they were unloading fish. And I just thought, this is what it was like.
Yeah.
This was amazing. So listen, encourage you folks, if you haven't done it yet, do make plans, put it on your bucket list, whatever people say, and it is worth it. It really is to go. So we are looking forward to the reports coming back.
Yeah.
Walker and Wesley and Tim were all there with about 90 friends, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we look forward to that.
Yeah. I look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah. So you get the chance to go. And we welcome you, listeners, wherever you are today, in your car, in your house, in the shop. We were just talking about, before going on the air, about the magic of radio. You can take radio anywhere these days.
That's right.
Now you got it on your app, which I like to use
Yeah.
from time to time when I'm traveling. So welcome, folks. Good to have you with us. Well, not much happening today, so we're going to play Kumbaya for the next hour and a half.
Let me go get my recorder from 5th grade Sunday school.
All right. No, Chris, lead us off. What do you got?
Well, in about 7 minutes' time, President Trump is going to kick off the first cabinet meeting of the new Trump administration. All the cabinet members are expected to be there, as well as unofficial cabinet member Elon Musk, the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. According to C-SPAN, Mr. Elon Musk will also be in that cabinet meeting. Topics are going to be a wide range of topics: the economy, illegal immigration, visas. And I mentioned visas because President Trump yesterday grabbed a bunch of headlines by opening up what he called a financial pathway to citizenship with a gold visa that cost $5 million. $5 million with an M. Mr. Trump says people who buy the visa must make an investment in a commercial enterprise and employ at least 10 qualified workers. Don't take my word for it. Clip 1.
We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people.
Tony, we were talking to Steve Jordahl at our newsroom story meeting this morning. He kind of came in on the back end of this story, and he thought that the Trump administration was putting out a Visa gold card with $5 million. Not quite.
From the Doge savings.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's right.
From Elon.
Yeah, but I can imagine, Tony, the left is going to go ballistic over this. Hey, you can buy citizenship from Donald Trump.
This is nothing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is replacing an existing program that existed before, right?
I think it's EB5.
Yeah, EB5 program.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see an issue with this. I understand what the optics of it look like, but this is nothing. Trump again, once again, is just trying to level the playing field with other countries, other trade partners that what they've been doing for decades now, which is other countries like China, India. Some of our larger trading partners, they do the same thing.
Yes.
They'll welcome American businessmen who want to bring their business, bring their money, and invest in their economy. And there has to be a kickback for someone to want to do that, and that's what this is. It's just taking a program and implementing what other people have been doing. And again, this isn't replacing the existing immigration system and the process that people can go through, most of whom don't have $5 million, right? Don't have 2 nickels, I think Chris said this morning, 2 nickels to their name. So it's not replacing that. This is just the left, once again, no matter what Trump does, honestly, they're going to lose their mind about it.
Ray, this is Trump the businessman once again. How do we bring business into the shop? And one way to do it is, for $5 million. Someone described this morning as a super green card. It doesn't replace the green card, but it's a super green card because these people are going to bring. And I know $5 million sounds like a whole lot of money to most of us, but there are people in the world that would look at this and say, yeah, I'll put the $5 million on my visa.
Oh, look, if you've got $5 million, China's going to say, come on in.
Yeah.
Russia's going to say, come on in. India's going to say, come on in. Hungary's going to say, come on in, right? South Africa's going to say, come on in. it's just the way the world works. And yeah, Tony, you're right. The optics, this gold card thing, Trump's the consummate. He's partly businessman and partly showman. He knows how to make headlines and make a splash, but it's nothing different than other countries have been doing for many, many years. And anything that will bring some rich people into the U.S. who will create good, sustainable jobs, I am all in favor of that.
Yeah, Canada has been doing this for years, and it really blossomed when the news came that Hong Kong was returning to Chinese control. There were many, many millionaires in Hong Kong.
Right.
They wanted an expedited way to get into Canada, to get into the United States. But in Canada, come along, bring your money, and start a business. And it's an all win-win for the countries that get involved with this. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think it'll take too long to get some takers on this, Chris.
Well, meanwhile, liberals are going to find something about Trump to not like. And they're going to try to work with news outlets to say, this is terrible, it's un-American, vote for us next time around, that kind of thing. So while left-wing Democrats and their allies in the media are opposing the Trump administration, specifically border czar Tom Homan, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, left-wing liberals are opposing them, but Tom Homan is out there saying, don't listen to them. Regular citizens support Trump, and we're here to help you. Clip 4.
Look, I've been around the country doing many operations in the community, whether they see it at the airport, whether they see it at a restaurant, or out doing the operation. I can't tell you how many members of the community come up and thank us for being there. President Trump made a promise to the American people when he got elected that he's going to make our community safer, especially from illegal alien violent crime. That's exactly what we're doing. And we're doing it across the nation. As far as the politicians who want to push back and attack the men and women of ICE and myself, I'm not running a popularity contest. I'm out there doing what the president promised the American people we're going to do. We're out there enforcing the law without apology. We're going to keep coming. You can put all the roadblocks you want up. We're going to keep coming. For these sanctuary cities who want to push back and impede us, we'll double the man force there. We'll double worksite enforcement there. We're not going away. We're going to keep coming at them until every criminal illegal alien gang member, every illegal alien criminal is eradicated from this country. That's when I'll be satisfied.
So Tom Homan, Tony, is Trump's border czar. I can't help but compare to Biden's border czar.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris. I mean, the contrast is deep dark and deep light there. It is absolutely incredible. Tom Homan, I look at him when he's interviewed on Fox a whole lot, and I see bulldog.
That's right.
And he's bringing that into the job.
Yeah, he's like he said, he's not in it for a popularity contest. He is simply carrying out the promises and the orders that Trump gave from his campaign promises to cut back on illegal immigration, to deport illegal immigrants, starting with, first of all, and the reason why this is so popular, according to poll numbers, is you're starting with criminals, right? People who have been here illegally, terrorizing communities, terrorizing towns. A lot of times they're starting with those people, getting them out. I mean, he's just carrying out the directive of the Trump administration, which is what, which is under the Biden administration, Alejandro Mayorkas carried out. And, if she did anything, Kamala Harris, their directive was to let as many people come in as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why people are going to be upset with Tom Homan, who's just doing his job, the job that Trump gave him, and the directive. He's just carrying it out. So.
And Ray, it is working. We're told from multiple reports on the border, hardly anybody is showing up at the fences anymore. I think the other day there may have been about 200 in one day, compared to upwards of 16,000 a day. Anybody who could say this isn't working, I mean, you're just not dealing with reality. Right. This is working, Ray.
Well, that was the lowest day, I think, in the last 15 years, some phenomenal number like that. And I'm sitting listening to the conversation, thinking to myself, it's quite a contrast from Mr. Trump's first term to this term. Well organized, and I think what has caught the liberals by surprise is that he put really good people in all of these positions, and he told them, go fast, get out of the gate fast, and I think that has I think that's one reason on the left they're screaming so badly. They really didn't think Mr. Trump was going to go as fast as he did. He's only doing, friends, he's only doing what he said he would do when he was running for president. Now he's president, and he's doing it. Good for him.
It's one of the primary responsibilities of the federal government, if we need to remind people, is to enforce our border protections. It is to protect the border, to protect the United States. So it's not even like this is something that's going beyond the responsibilities and duties of the federal government. This is actually the federal government carrying out one of its primary responsibilities.
Well, a country is defined by its borders.
That's right.
I mean, that's why it's so important to defend those borders. And what we had over the last 4 years was 180 degrees to that. Now, Chris, as far as border security goes and dealing with illegal immigrants, the Trump administration has kind of a two-pronged approach. And Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has introduced kind of a novel way of dealing with people who are in the country illegally but may want to escape any serious consequences. Tell us about that.
Yes, Kristi Noem, you talk about a change in atmosphere. I mean, Alejandro Mayorkas rarely went out on the field with ICE agents and Department of Homeland Security personnel, but Kristi Noem has been out there. She's actually been part of several raids to round up and deport illegal immigrants. Her latest effort is it's an effort to fingerprint illegal immigrants as part of a plan to know who they are, and they can start keeping a documentation of who this person is, have they been here before, that kind of thing. And she's doing a press about it. Here's a little bit of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem on Fox. Clip 2.
The Alien Registration Act says that within 30 days of being in this country illegally, someone must register with the federal government. They will be fingerprinted. They must announce that they are here. And if they do so, they can avoid criminal charges and fines, and we will help them relocate right back to their home country. If they don't register, they're breaking the federal law.
That brings into play something that Caroline Levitt said one of her first White House press briefings. She was asked by a reporter, Levitt was, what's the difference between somebody who came here without our permission and they're just, living their life and they're raising a family, and somebody that came here illegally? And she said, well, if you came here illegally, you're all illegal.
Yes.
So the Trump administration is of the opinion there is no difference in these people. They're all here illegally.
Tony, it's kind of a carrot-stick approach. So Holman is taking care of the stick, and Kristi Noem is announcing a bit of a carrot there.
Right.
You're in the country illegally. You want to try to make things right. Come in, talk to us. We fingerprint you. We're going to send you home, but we're going to leave the door open for you to apply to come back. And you're already fingerprinted.
Right.
That could expedite that.
Yeah, this works on two fronts. So it does provide a way for people who have come in illegally and have broken our laws. It does provide them a way to kind of declare themselves. And yes, the consequences of it could be deportation. But like you said, you'll be put in, I'm assuming, what would be some type of priority list, or you're already documented with us. So when you come back and you try to enter legally, we already know who you are. We know how long you were here. We have your, if you have a criminal record or if there's any record of you, we already have that in place, and we can kind of prioritize you on getting in. The other front that this handles is the security front. So we will know if you decide to be fingerprinted and you are deported and you try to come back illegally again, we will also have a record of that, because I'm assuming this would open up the program at the border. If someone is caught at the border trying to enter illegally, we'll just check your fingerprint, and if you're already in the system, you've already done this once, then there may be some consequences for that. So I don't see anything wrong with gathering more information about who's been in here illegally. I don't see a problem with that. I think that's something that needs to be done. It's better than the opposite, which is what we had for 4 years, where we don't know who's here, we don't know where they came from, and we have no desire to catch them.
Yeah.
So
180 degrees. All right, Chris.
Talk about another change here. It was made known early on in the first few days of this new Trump administration that there were going to be new faces, new news outlets in the White House press team, and they were going to be changing. You were going to see some people that you had not seen before. at the last press briefing, that kind of thing. The White House doubled down on that yesterday. As a matter of fact, the new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said a select group of D.C.-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly of press access at the White House. Moving forward, she said, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Now, for decades, guys, that responsibility had been held by the White House Correspondents Association. But again, the White House is saying, we're going to start picking who's coming in here and we're going to change people around, all that stuff. Obviously, the mainstream media, specifically the Associated Press, they're all up in arms about this. But Caroline Leavitt is standing by her announcement and that decision from the new Trump administration. Clip 6.
So for your audience who may not understand what has happened at this White House for decades, you have a group of journalists based here in Washington, D.C., who dictate which reporters go into the most intimate spaces of the American presidency, the Oval Office, who gets to ride on Air Force One. And that system hasn't changed since the early 1900s. Obviously, the media today in 2025 looks a heck of a lot different than it did when the White House Correspondents Association was formed. So this is a long overdue change. A lot of press secretaries and White Houses have talked about making this change. We are just the first to do it. We're shaking up Washington in more ways than one. And so moving forward, we're going to expand the pool's access to the president, to non-traditional journalists. Legacy media will still have a seat, just like they still have a seat in our briefing room, but we're going to bring new voices into the fold. The only people who are upset about this are those who feel like it's a knock on their power that they've had over the system. The power belongs to the people, not elitist journalists in Washington, D.C.
Ray, just so people understand, the way it has been, the representatives of the New York Times, NBC, CBS, CNN, they had this Correspondents Association, and they were they were the court that decided what reporters got into the daily briefing to ask questions, and they decided who got on Air Force One when the president is traveling. So you, certainly, I think people can understand, Ray, you had people, correspondents, who are part of news agencies who hate Donald Trump and hate the Trump administration, and let's face it, I think they strongly dislike conservative Christians and the people who support Donald Trump. They don't like these people. So, but they had the power to decide who got in to ask questions. And all that the White House is saying is, wait a minute now, there's no constitutional guarantee that you guys have the power to decide this. No, as Caroline Leavitt has said, it is a privilege to be able to cover the president at the White House and on Air Force One. And basically what we're going to do is kind of increase the availability of the president to other, podcasters, to other conservative news outlets that have not made it through that grid that the Associated or the Correspondents Association had set up.
And Fred, may I say, it's about time. It's about time that this iron control that the leftist media had on White House access, it's about time it was broken. I mean, the real problem with the system the way it was is not who they let in, it's who they kept out.
Yes.
They kept out dissenting voices. They kept out people they didn't agree with. They kept out people who were going to ask inconvenient or really tough questions of the administration. And as you said, very importantly, there's no law, there's no statute that gives this Correspondents Association the right to decide who gets access to the president and to the White House. So, again, this is a win for democracy. This is a win for the people. We're going to have more voices. We're going to have well, you said podcasters. Well, that's a good 21st century thing. That they didn't have to worry about that 30 years ago. It's going to be all to the good to have a broader spectrum, conservative, moderate, liberal, whatever it is. Broader voices means better coverage out, and the people of America are going to have a better understanding. So, yeah, bully for them for doing this.
And Tony Leavitt did say that this doesn't mean that NBC and CBS and CNN aren't going to be allowed in the room. Right. They're just going to create options that allow other people to get in that room.
Yeah, folks, let me just read off to you for a second the members. I'm on the White House Correspondents Association website, and I'm going to read off members of the officers, members of the board, who I assume are the ones in charge of deciding what news associations will be be let into the press room. Let's see, the president. It works for Politico. I'm not going to go through names and positions, but the president works for Politico. Vice president, CBS News. Secretary, CBS News. Treasurer, Bloomberg. Board member, just generic board member, Fox News. So they stuck one in there. Board member, Reuters, BBC, ABC News. So there you go.
Yeah.
The people who have been gatekeeping, who is allowed in and who's allowed, like Ray said, to ask hard questions, all belong to legacy media.
Yeah.
So of course, since this inception of this organization, if they don't want you in, you're not going to get in to ask hard questions, to press the issues that people actually really care about. And so it's no surprise that they're disagreeing with this, and they're reinforcing their own bias. You can see the headlines from these legacy media corporations as they cover this. Trump was trying to enforce control over who's allowed to have access to the president. The headlines, of course, are spinning, only reinforcing the reason why this was done in the first place.
The reality is, in the way it's been in the past, is these Correspondents Association, they were the censors. They were controlling who could get in and ask questions. The Trump administration is not censoring. They're just saying, we're giving other people a chance to ask the questions. All right. This first half hour is just spun by quickly, and there's much more ahead. Going to be going up to Washington, D.C., talking with Gary Bauer, our good friend Gary Bauer, president of American Values, when we come back on this Wednesday edition of Today's Issues.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Is there something you wish to accomplish? Is there some great goal, some high ambition that looms out before you, calling you to it? Well, you can do it. You can accomplish whatever it is that you wish to accomplish. Nothing you wish to accomplish, if it's in keeping with God's will, is impossible. With Him, all things are possible. And many people are surprised to learn that He wants us to accomplish our highest ambitions. If you wish to accomplish something, make sure it's in keeping with God's will. Then, turn yourself over to Him and become the instrument through which He can accomplish whatever it is that the two of you wish to accomplish. Commit everything you do to the Lord, said the psalmist. Trust Him to help you do it, and He will. But you must not only believe in God, you must also believe in yourself. If you don't believe you can accomplish it, then the chances of your accomplishing it are mighty small. But if you believe it is God's will and you can do it, then the world can't keep the two of you from accomplishing it. God has said, everything is possible for him who has faith. Faith includes a belief in yourself. What a person accomplishes in life depends on what he believes he can accomplish. A little Jewish tent maker once said, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. You know, that's a powerful creed for a person to live by. I personally believe it's true. I think I can accomplish things that would otherwise be impossible because of the strength I gained from the Galilean carpenter. But let us remember that there's a vast difference between cocky egotism and humble self-confidence. Egotism is when God is left out. Humble self-confidence is when God is your partner. If we wish to accomplish anything, then one thing we must learn to do and do often: work. There is absolutely no substitute for hard, diligent work. You know, genius is 90% hard work and 10% natural ability. Some folks wish to work for 45 minutes and get paid for 2 hours, but life doesn't operate that way. Life pays us only for the time we put in. A person reaps what he sows. Hard work means prosperity, said a wise king long ago. Only a fool idles away his time. On another occasion, he said, Do you know a hard-working man? He shall be successful and stand before kings. One other thing is necessary if you wish to accomplish a great goal. Keep working at it. When obstacles come, double in your belt. Take a dose of self-confidence medicine. Ask God to help you and go at it again. Be prepared for temporary setbacks. They're going to come. Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs, but he also struck out 1,330 times. God wants us to accomplish much in life, and with His help, we can.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love Him. 1 Corinthians 2:9.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
And indeed, welcome back to this Wednesday edition of Today's Issues. Fred Jackson here, along with Tony Vitagliano, Chris Woodward, and Ray Pritchard. And we're joined right now from Washington, D.C. I was going to say high on his perch overlooking the district. Our good friend Gary Bauer, president of American Values. Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Fred. I'm glad I'm just not doing the interview from jail now that we won an election.
Not yet, son.
This just in.
I tell you what, Gary, we haven't had a chance to talk with you since Inauguration Day. And I think even as conservatives, we are surprised at the speed that President Donald Trump has been able to move through his agenda. So an exciting time. What do your neighbors say about all of this? I'm just curious. You've been living in the D.C. area for many years now. When you talk to folks at church and other places, what are they saying?
Well, when I left the house last night and addressed the mob of my neighbors outside the house protesting what was going on, I think everybody here is pretty stunned at the quickness. And look, this did not happen by accident. The president over the last 4 years has had a team around him that have been working nonstop toward the eventuality that if he did win again, that they would be ready to hit the ground running. And so a lot of preliminary work was done, a lot of analysis by lawyers and others. So he's been able to move, I think, obviously more quickly than any previous president. And quite frankly, he is setting a standard that I think it's going to be hard for any future Republican or conservative president to meet. But nonetheless, there is also an extraordinary pushback as over 30 lawsuits have been filed by various left-wing groups to try to block the things that he's doing in a wide variety of areas.
Gary, were you surprised? You talk about pushback. Were you surprised by the pushback that we're seeing against simple requests like, could you tell me the 5 things that you've done on your job in the last few days? You would have thought that they were being ordered to go out and take vaccinations for every disease in the world. You know, it's just been absolutely amazing because in the private sector, that's kind of a normal thing that you have to be able to justify the work you do. But these federals, and I know a lot of them are unionized, they're just got their arms up and they're just crying foul over this.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I mean, you're absolutely right, Fred, that we've all had similar situations where we've worked where our superior or the person above us or the person that runs the company or the organization basically periodically, sometimes daily, says, what did you accomplish today? How did you help the business? How did you advance the cause of the nonprofit group that you're working for? To see civil servants, with the emphasis on servants, recoil at the very idea that they have to be accountable. They have to show their boss, who is not Doge or Elon Musk, although he's speaking for their boss is the American taxpayer. And we have a right to know whether our money is being wisely used, and if we're paying people salaries way above the average salary in America, are they doing anything? I had a guy working for me at the Department of Education all the way back in the early 80s under Ronald Reagan. I didn't see him very much. He was a bureaucrat. He was supposed to be a senior person on the undersecretary's staff. I was the undersecretary. So I started inquiring around. The guy never came to work. He was a real estate agent. He was selling houses around Washington and drawing a full-time salary from the taxpayer at the Department of Education. He was, I'm proud to say, my first fire.
Gary, you got to tell us the story from your end of day yesterday. By the way, I want to tell folks how to get your excellent end of day report. But tell us the story about U.S. aid and where some of that money was going. You addressed this yesterday under the title, What Democrats Are Defending.
You know, Fred, the contracts that were being let out were just incredible. Supporting the major LGBTQ group in England. Can't they support their own LGBT group in England? Does the American taxpayer have to support that too? There was a multi-million-dollar program being funded by USAID, and I'm being a little careful here because some of this stuff you don't even want to talk about on radio, but it was to provide circumcisions for men in Bolivia. I don't know. It seems like something that Bolivian men ought to take care of themselves, not some hardworking farmer in Iowa, or the Uber driver in Cincinnati. But there were just one of these things after another, and including money that was going to radical Islamic groups in a variety of countries, groups that other parts of the U.S. government are working every day to counter and to stop. There was money out of U.S. aid going to those groups. So this is outrageous. It's a scandal. And of course, there are all kinds of people dug in to defend the budget at U.S. aid when it's a perfect example of what's going wrong in our country.
Hey, it's Chris here. I have a question about U.S. aid. It's my understanding that started about 60 some odd years ago under President John F. Kennedy's watch. It expanded or continued under LBJ's administration.
Right.
And the idea, as I understand it, was to help promote and expand democracy in other countries. We would give them some money to help do things. But were we, Gary, funding things like you just mentioned and paying for shrimp on treadmills and all these other things that we're known to be tossing money around and lighting it on fire doing today?
No. At the beginning, it was exactly what you just described. It was supposed to be, in some ways, many ways, a tool of American foreign policy. We wanted to strengthen democracies and so forth. Unfortunately, it got way past that. But then there's even another problem, which, as we have seen recently, the very concept of defending democracy has become weaponized. So what was the major thing that President Trump's opponents said about him? He was a threat to our democracy. That was one of their big themes. Well, we're now finding out that U.S. aid has been giving money all over the world to left-wing newspapers, to left-wing political organizations, all sorts of groups pushing neo-Marxist agendas, and all of this in the name of defending our democracy. So we discovered that there are thousands of reporters and many liberal newspapers around the world, left-wing newspapers, that are getting subsidies from U.S. aid, again, from the American taxpayer.
Amazing. Ray?
Gary, sometimes people wonder, is this a brand new thing, this growth of bureaucracy? And the resistance to any attempts to rein it in. Yesterday, in your end of the day report, you told a fascinating story that goes back to the days of Ronald Reagan when you and William Bennett were together at the Department of Education, and how you worked to bring down the size of that one department, and you were stymied in your efforts. Could you tell that story for our listeners?
I sure will, and I just can't tell you how happy I am to hear you guys are all reading that end of day. I mean, I'm emoting a lot and trying to get a lot of information out there, and I do really appreciate that people do read it and hopefully act on it. But you're absolutely right. Bill Bennett and I were at the Department of Education, and one day I came in, and we'd been ordering all kinds of things to be done in the department, and Bennett said to me, do you have the same feeling I do? You know, we're making all these orders, but nothing's actually happening. And yeah, I said I had the same idea. So we decided the bureaucracy wasn't going to cooperate. We thought there were a lot of people that were dead weights. They just weren't doing anything. We brought in some business people to do an audit of the department. We had somewhere around, as I recall, I think it was 15,000 employees. The business group did the audit and said we could run the whole place with 800 people or 900 people. So Bennett and I started calling people in that were not doing their job, and we began to fire them. Of course, they ran to Capitol Hill, and the Congress of the United States, literally in legislation, set a floor on the number of employees there had to be at the Department of Education, and that floor just happened to be identical to the number of employees that were currently at the Department of Education. And I'm sad to say that not only did the Democrats pass that bill, but quite a few what we now call rhino Republicans voted to do it to us too. So here's Secretary of Education Bill Bennett, his Undersecretary Gary Bauer, and we didn't even have any authority over how many people should work for us as we ran the department.
That is an amazing story. And just the fact that you brought in private sector people, I'm thinking some things haven't changed. Trump brings in Elon Musk to try to clean up the shop a bit, but we could have a whole discussion about rhino Republicans. I know, and I think, am I right to say, Gary, you think there's fewer of those that would cause a problem this time around? People say this is Donald Trump's Republican Party. Is that a good assessment?
I think there are fewer rhinos who, as a matter of philosophy, want the Republican Party to be only slightly right of center or completely in the center or whatever. But what I don't think there's any real change in is the number of people in the party in elected office who, quite frankly, are cowards. They don't want to take any risk. They're worried about the day they get elected. The very next day, they're worried about what they have to do to get reelected. And, of course, that tends to lend itself to a Congress that votes benefits because everybody loves to get something from the federal government. But it makes it very difficult to find a majority in Congress that are willing to cut back on programs that means that somebody's going to get something less than they did the year before. So the president's got his hands full in keeping that gang together. He did it last night, though, by the way. There were 4 holdouts on that budget vote. The president got on the phone, and last night it passed by 1 vote.
Yeah, hi, Gary. It's Tony Vitagliano. It sounds to me like that story, again, to reiterate what Fred said about the Department of Education, that's fascinating to me because you know what that sounds like? That sounds like how a private corporation would operate if there was if there were unlimited funds, if they had unlimited revenue, if they never had to worry about the bottom line or about providing a service that people want to pay for. That's what it sounds like the federal government has been operating as for the last, decades, years and years,
Right.
going far back, obviously. It sounds like the U.S. government has operated under the assumption that we will never run out of money, which is true, because up until recently, and at least in my very short time here on this earth, compared to some people in the room.
Thanks, Tony.
People are finally starting to talk about cutting spending. The reality of that is that if you cut spending, people have to go, and it happens. I've come from the corporate world. It happens in the corporate world all the time, and it's happening even now. Corporations, they're not bringing in enough money, so they have to do something to help the bottom line, and that usually includes laying off people. And this is the fact that the federal government, employees in the federal government, are recoiling at this, and the media is recoiling at this, just shows how long we have been disconnected from reality as to how the government is supposed to function and how it has been functioning for decades.
That's a great summary. If you just thumb through the Wall Street Journal on a typical morning, every day there are announcements by major corporations who are doing layoffs. Volkswagen is a German headquartered company, but it's got a big presence in the United States, and they're having trouble in the competition, in the auto competition. And they've announced they're going to be laying off 20,000 people this year. So it's a regular fact of life every place except in the federal government. And the American taxpayers are obviously taking care of that bill. I don't know how old you are. I've been around for a while, and you're right. We've always been able to come up with more money by either just printing it or whatever. But now I think we're at that crossroads. The interest we're paying on the national debt is now greater than the entire U.S. defense budget. And that's what interest rates being sort of in the middle. If we ever have a period where interest rates spike back up to 7, 8, 9%, the interest payments will consume the revenue that the United States government takes in. Right. So we're really at a do or die moment, and unfortunately it's at a time when we do have to increase spending on national defense as China looms right over the horizon, and a lot of insiders in Washington believe it's going to be a miracle for us to avoid a major world war sometime in the next 10 years.
Gary, last question, and I know that you love Israel and the Jewish people. Do you think that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu can resolve the crisis in Gaza?
This is a major conundrum. I look at what's on the president's desk, literally and figuratively. I don't think there's been a president in a long time that has this much of a load because of so many mistakes that have been made in the past. If anybody can solve the dilemma, it's going to be the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, and the president. It's great. I know they're celebrating in Israel that they have a president again that's not working at loggerheads with them, contrary to Israel, but is working with them. There was this Gaza idea that came up. Everybody was screaming or laughing at the president's suggestion that Gaza had to be depopulated. We had to move people somewhere else if there was ever going to be peace. He actually was really hitting on a reality, and that is the indoctrination of the population of Gaza. Even after everything we've seen, solid majorities of the people in Gaza support the attack on Israel on October 7th, and reality does not seem to matter to them. I think if there was another election held in Gaza, Hamas would win again. So we've got to do something different than we've been doing in the last 30 years. And if anybody can do that, it would be Trump and Netanyahu working together.
I said last question. I'll say last question, point B.
Okay.
One of the big problems is Iran. And I've heard two people on interviews on our network in the last couple of days and one of them was Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, saying what keeps him awake at night. Lindsey Graham says what keeps him awake at night. And I thought he was going to say China, but he talked about Iran. And he says Israel has to take out their nuclear capability. Do you think Israel's ready to do that?
There have been rumors all over Washington among national security types, people that have been around for a long time, that sometime in the short-term future, Israel is going to be forced to deal with this nuclear threat from Iran. Just one nuclear device exploded over Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, given radiation and so forth, could effectively end the nation of Israel. And for Netanyahu and the Israeli government and the Israeli people, this is an existential issue. So I don't think you're going to sit around and wait. This is something obviously people need to pray about. But it is interesting to me that I'm hearing so many rumors that sometime in the next few months it could happen.
Wow. Gary, always great to have you. And as I mentioned earlier, I want you to tell people how to get your end-of-day report, because it is so good.
Well, thank you, Fred. They can go to ouramericanvalues.org and sign up for it there. We always love getting more people to read it. And I'm urging people not only to do that, but at this particular time to pray for our country and for the president. We narrowly avoided a disaster in the election in November, but we're not out of the high water yet, and these are still perilous times for our nation.
Gary, once again, thank you so much, Gary Bauer, and always a pleasure and a treasure to talk to you, sir.
Great to be with all of you. God bless.
All right, take care. Ray, we're talking to Gary about Iran and everything Middle East-wise, and I know that you are a great student and teacher of biblical prophecy. How do you see everything that's developing there? And this, as Gary's saying, and I'm hearing more and more of these rumors that Israel may try to take out Iran's nuclear capability. Boy, you talk about tensions rising in the Middle East. How does that fit in, do you believe, into biblical prophecy?
Fred, one of the interesting things for me lately, I've been in the book of Genesis, been studying Genesis 4 and 5 and 6, the events between the creation and fall and leading up to Noah's great flood. And the thing that's impressed upon me is how the Bible begins in a particular place. It begins in the Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve are cast out, and there goes Cain, and he sets up a city. But it's all happening. It's all happening in the land that is today modern-day Iraq and Iran. That's the cradle of the world, the cradle of civilization. The Bible begins there. The story of the Bible ends there. It ends in the Middle East. And we like to think here in America, well, we must be the center of the world from God's point of view. Well, let's be clear. The story of the Bible did not start in Washington, New York, or Chicago. It started in the Middle East. It's going to come to a climax there. And I think, folks, if you want to know how close we are, I can't set any dates. I have no inside information here. But everything that we find in the book of Matthew, the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, it all lines up with what is happening around us. And what Gary said, this is what a huge step that would be for Israel, not just to attack, but to take out all the nuclear reactors in Iran. That's a big step forward toward the events that lead us to the last days and the return of Christ. So, friends, read your Bibles, get your feet down solid in God's revelation, and keep your eyes on the Middle East. That's where the story starts. Yeah. That's where it's going to come to an end.
I heard a guy recently, he was speaking at a church, and he mentioned, he said, I don't just believe we're in the last days, I think we're in the last hours. Oh. And, who's to say we're not, for sure.
Well, when you see Ray and Tony your comments too. When you see the superpowers, the great concern about China, you see Russia and Iran and the alliance that they have. The Iranians are getting very nervous because they see what Israel's been able to do to Hezbollah and Hamas. That's why I think the tension is rising on the Iranian front now.
Yeah, and that's why this it does, to be honest, it does feel different to me. War. If you lived during World War I and World War II, those would have probably looked like the end of days, right? I mean, Adolf Hitler is about as close to an Antichrist figure as you could come to. But what to me stands out and makes this different, if we are, some people say we're teetering on World War III, or we're kind of in the early stages. Some people say we're not in World War III. It's just a period of unrest. But if there were to be another world war, God forbid, what would make this different to me is the existence of the nation of Israel and the biblical implications that has on the world stage and what happens to it. It's different to me than World War II, where the nation of Israel doesn't exist, for instance. So that's what feels different to me about it.
Absolutely. All right, folks. And as Gary suggested, and we all agree on this panel for sure, we need to pray for Israel, pray for the wisdom of the Prime Minister, pray for President Trump. President Trump is a great ally of Israel. And we also know what the Bible says. Those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse will be cursed. So pray for wisdom for these world leaders, and we stand fast with them. All right, we're going to take a little break for news here, and we'll be right back.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio. The Stand provides a Christian perspective on current issues that are important to your family. Produced by the American Family Association, this monthly magazine is full of articles and stories about people who are making a difference in their community and around the world. Sign up today and receive a free 6-month subscription. Visit thestand.net or call 1-800-326-4543. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The House of Representatives voting to narrowly pass their budget framework late Tuesday with a little help from President Trump. Michigan Congresswoman Lisa McClain says she believes this is a great day for Americans and argues they will be able to deal with issues like excessive spending.
We are reducing our spending, and I am excited to get to work on that. Is it going to be pretty? No. Is it going to be a little bit messy? Yeah, it is. But that's the beauty of our democracy, is we can have these debates to get to a better place.
A ceasefire persists between Israel and Hamas as hostages have been released and Palestinian prisoners have been freed. Greg Palcott is in Tel Aviv with more.
Israeli media reporting the last 4 murdered hostages to be released in this first ceasefire phase will be handed over, plus hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. That exchange had been delayed by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. This amid word Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff could be coming to the region starting on Sunday to see about possibly extending the current agreement phase and getting more hostages out, laying the groundwork for the next. This as 32-year-old Shiri Bibas and her 2 young sons, Ariel and Kafir, were laid to rest, symbols of the hostage horror.
The White House announcing yesterday that the White House Correspondents Association will no longer be responsible for determining which outlets get access to the briefing room, instead giving that role to the White House press team. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying the move gives more power back to the people. She defends the move, saying this is long overdue.
Moving forward, we're going to expand the pool's access to the president, to non-traditional journalists. Legacy media will still have a seat, just like they still have a seat in our briefing room, but we're going to bring new voices into the fold. The only people who are upset about this are those who feel like it's a knock on their power that they've had over the system. The power belongs to the people, not elitist journalists in Washington, D.C.
President Trump recently designating 8 criminal gangs from Latin America as terrorist organizations as part of the administration's efforts to stop illegal immigration and drug trafficking into the U.S. The president's border czar, Tom Homan, says he agrees with the move and believes they need to increase the pressure against these groups.
President Trump has designated them a terrorist organization. We need to treat them exactly like that. Anybody associated with them, anybody funding them, anybody transporting for them are part of a terrorist organization. We need to put the whole weight of the world of the United States government on them.
A Massachusetts-based pro-family activist says when it comes to immigration policy, it's as if the Biden administration is still in Massachusetts. Chad Groening has more.
Recently, Boston Police Chief and Commissioner Michael Cox said he would not cooperate with hold requests from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, citing Massachusetts state law. During an address at the recent Conservative Political Action Committee gathering, Trump border czar Tom Homan had a message for Cox. I'm coming to Boston.
You're not a police commissioner. Take that badge off your chest, put it in the desk drawer. Because you became a politician, you forgot what it's like to be a cop.
Brian Kemaker is president of Mass Resistance.
It's as if the Biden administration is still here in Massachusetts. At least we got rid of it nationally, but it's just horrible here. Everybody lives in fear that they'll come after them in some way or something will happen. Thank heaven that the feds are coming in. That's all I can say. And I think a lot of people feel that way too.
And Kemaker doesn't think this is going to end well.
I think the feds are going to come in here and they're going to sweep this place and they're going to charge public officials with federal felonies. And they should. That's what I think will happen. At least that's what I hope will happen.
I'm Chad Groening.
The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating a near collision between a Southwest Airlines plane and a FlexJet plane on a runway in Chicago Tuesday. NTSB Chair Jennifer Hamady says they still have a lot of questions about what happened, but they say it wasn't caused by air traffic control, but by pilots not listening.
It appears this was a failure of the flight crew from FlexJet to listen and abide by the instructions of air traffic control.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty P.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR.
And welcome back to this Wednesday edition of Today's Issues. Fred Jackson here, along with Tony Vitagliano and Ray Pritchard. And joining us in studio right now, Steve Jordahl. Steve,
hey,
welcome.
everybody.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
We have a TV set here in studio, and I think it's BBC, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. And every screen is the same at this moment. They are covering President Trump's first cabinet meeting since he regained the presidency. And we have been noting, Ray, that Elon Musk has been addressing the room like he's kind of taken over the room. But we were just talking, Ray, here about the team of Donald Trump and Elon Musk, both private sector giants. And basically, they're bringing all of that expertise into the federal government. And it has the heads of the left just spinning.
Well, look, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world for a reason. He has a brilliant mind. He's an unusual person, right? Mm-hmm. He's an unusual thinker, great grasp of the issues. So I'm not surprised that he's there at the first cabinet meeting. Now, in those TV feeds, is it just a visual feed, or can you actually hear what's being said?
Just a visual.
No, you can hear what's being said. It's just not. We don't have it up in the up in the studio.
But
I was listening.
Okay, give us a play-by-play. What was going on in there?
Well, first of all, he came in with a T-shirt that read "Federal Tech Support," which got a good laugh.
This is Musk.
Yeah. And then he just said that they're finding tons of waste, and then he explained the memo that he asked from federal employees to list 5 things that they'd done, and there was a second chance, and it was pretty much everything. He didn't say anything that would have been shocking or revelatory to anybody that's been following the story. So,
Tony, I'm not aware of a change in administrations where we have seen such a radical turn, like 180 degrees to what we saw under Joe Biden, who was hard to keep awake during his cabinet meetings, and he only had a few.
You're right.
But you've got people extremely engaged and taking the country in a whole new direction.
Yeah, I think it seems kind of unprecedented. You're going to have a hard time going in the history books and finding a change of winds, so to speak, more so than at least this one, more so than this one. This is just such a radical shift in policy, in the way the government will function going forward, that it's got people excited, right? And it's got other people scared to death. And those who are scared are those who have probably been benefiting, from the way the system has been set up for the last 4 or 5 decades, if not longer than that. So it's exciting for me to see. I'm 35. Gary was asking; he wasn't sure in the last segment how old I was. I kind of threw some jabs lovingly at others in the room, but I'm 35, and I don't recall ever seeing an administration come in and have in advocating for the government working for the people as much as this administration has.
And Ray, I think what we're seeing today in this new administration is the result of how bad the Biden 4 years was. And it was all the country woke up. Our country's being invaded. Our country is being run by a president who's half asleep most of the time. The world is in chaos. China is gaining militarily. We've got the war in Ukraine. We have October 7th, 2023, where 1,200 Israeli men, women, and children were massacred. It took those tragedies, it took these horrors for the country to wake up and say, hey, what the left is bringing us is dangerous, and we've got to have a change.
It's as if the U.S. government is now working on double espresso steroids. I mean, whatever it was, whatever the slow plotting speed of the Biden administration, where day after day, we talked about it 1,000 times on this program about Joe Biden and his gaffes and how he didn't seem to be there. Wow, those days are gone. So now the news cycle is moving at the speed of Trump, which is like the speed of light. It's changing about every hour. I think it's pretty exciting. And again, this is what America voted for. Some people on the left are complaining. Yeah, they're yelling about it, but he's only doing what he said he was going to do.
That's right.
Steve, the other thing that must have head spinning, you look around that table, there's a lot of folks that used to be on Fox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's not unusual. There was a lot of people on Biden's team that used to be with MSNBC or CNN and everything.
Yeah.
So he's looking for people who share his vision or who will carry out his vision. Everybody thinks they're looking for loyalty, that he wants to be an autocrat, that he's pledged loyalty to me. It's not. But his vision is what he was elected to pursue, and he can't have a federal government, which he oversees, the executive branch, have a whole bunch of people underneath him that don't buy into the vision and are bent on corrupting it or fighting it. So I think it's just normal. This is how it should be working. It just never has before.
All right, Steve.
All right. I want to take you to Maine. Do you remember the president recently last week, he was talking to all the state governors. He had a governor's conference in there, and in that conference he called out Maine's governor, and because he was talking about having an executive order that said that you cannot do have men or boys competing in girls' sports, the transgender whole thing, and the Maine governor there said, no, we're not going to comply with that, and they ended up both saying, well, I'll see you in court. Well, let's go back to Maine. In Maine, there is a lawmaker there, a state lawmaker. Her name is Laurel Libby.
She's Republican.
She is a Republican. And on her social media post, she put the pictures up of a couple transgender boys, some literal boys, that won, I think it was a pole vaulting competition, some track competition, and she put this up on her Facebook page. Well, the lawmakers in Maine, their House of Representatives, was having none of that.
And they're under Democrat control.
It is a thank you. It's a democratically controlled chamber, and so they pulled Laurel Libby up on. They censured her. They reprimanded her publicly, and then they said, unless you apologize, you don't have any privileges to talk on this floor. You're basically going to be put on the sideline. This was her response to that. To be
cut number 7.
7, thank you.
President Trump is right on with issuing this executive order that the vast majority of Americans and Mainers agree with. They don't want to see boys in girls' sports. And so we have a lot at risk here in our state. $250 million in federal funding. Governor Mills has got to let go of this extreme policy.
You know, Tony, the Democrats during Biden's years talked a lot about threat to democracy. Mm-hmm. Wow. What a good example of a threat to democracy. A Republican in Maine simply puts up a picture from an athletic event of a man, a boy who's been allowed to play as a girl in a girls' competition. And she says, this is not good. And by the way, it's in violation of what President Trump has put out as far as barring men from playing in female sports. Simple as that. But for saying that, for expressing that opinion as an elected member of the Maine legislature, she is told by the Democrats, you're not allowed to speak anymore in this chamber.
That's right. Yeah, so this is what the left often does. And it looks like she was censored probably on party lines. It was 75-70 vote.
It was, yeah.
This is what liberals will often do is they will mask the true motivation for wanting to silence somebody, which is that Laurel Libby was pointing out an inconvenient fact that Democrats everywhere are going to have to deal with, which is that, this isn't right. The majority of people do not support having men play in women's sports or boys play in girls' sports. They're having to try and grapple with that, but instead of dealing with that within their own ranks and trying to root that out and trying to get back to a just very basic biological truth, they have to mask that and come up with other reasons. And like you said, Washington Post motto, democracy dies in darkness. They often resort to very undemocratic means of silencing their opponents, which is what they've done here, demanding an apology from Laurel Libby. So it's not really even about the issue that they censored her for, about posting the photo of the student, because Libby herself makes the point that there are lots of photos of this person and others like him, all on social media. It's not really about that. It's about you're going to apologize for posting the photo, and we all know you want you to apologize for saying and speaking out against the Maine governor.
I'm sorry, Tony, but you have your biology wrong.
Yeah. I would think.
I want to play for you. This is Colorado Representative Karen McCormick. Now, she has introduced a bill in the Colorado legislature that would make it illegal, criminal, to misgender dead people for whatever reason, I guess. Not that they're going to care, but anyway, that's the bill. And in explaining her bill, she said this, cut 15.
We know even from fetal development perspective that sex is defined in the first trimester of pregnancy, whereas the beginnings of the sense of gender identity start in the second trimester of pregnancy. So certainly often these two things match up, but often they don't.
Yeah, your 6-month-old baby in womb, in utero, is starting to see that their gender doesn't match up and they're feeling uncomfortable with it.
Yeah. Ray, Biology 101. Biology 101. No, right. The XX or XY chromosomes determine male and female. That is decided at conception. Ray, to Tony and Steve's points, I do not understand why Democrats are making this one of their hills to die on, because the American public totally rejects this. We referenced a poll earlier in the week. Tony, you were alluding to this, I think. A poll, and I forget who put it out. It wasn't a conservative news agency, but I think it was like 90% of Republicans support the idea there's just male and female, and that males parading as so-called transgenders should not be allowed to play in women's sports. Over 60% of Democrats in that poll agreed with that. Over 60% of independents agreed with that. Yet the Democratic Party seems just to say, we don't care what the American public thinks about this matter. We're going to stick with this. It's a losing matter for the Democratic Party, but they're refusing to move off it, Ray.
Fred, I couldn't be happier with what you just said. I hope they stick right where they are. I mean, you've got left, you've got far left, and then somewhere out there in the fever swamp, you've got the current leadership of the Democratic Party. They don't really care. They are so in the thrall of wild, progressive, leftist propaganda about how many different genders, 53, 55, 58. You don't have to go to church, although you should go to church, but you don't have to go to church to know the difference between male and female. And if you do go to church, open your Bible to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26, 27. Male and female, he created them. This is basic biology. This is basic biblical truth. This is the world God created. And the Democrats are stubbornly refusing to bow the knee to what is obvious, revealed truth. And I think the American people, they are seeing the light on this issue, but the people who lead the Democrats are not. So I hope they stay that way.
Earlier this week, Tony, we had the Wisconsin Democrat governor talking about the terms that he wants. He doesn't want mom and dad anymore. He wants parent or spouse or whatever the case may be. But any kind of inclination towards there is a division between the sexes, he wants out of there.
Yeah, it's a Marxist game plan. Part of that game plan is to destroy the family unit and any representation of it and any identification of it. The family plan, the family unit designed by our Creator is the bedrock of civilization and society. So if you want to break down civilization and society, you start by going after the family unit. Then they can rebuild it and modify it and mold it into whatever they want to. And we're seeing what their intent and what their purpose is to redefine the family unit.
See?
All right. The president is busy with his pen again. He keeps signing executive orders, and one that we wanted to call your attention to was the executive order titled Eradicating Anti-Christian Bias. Now, this order establishes a task force that will be comprised of members of the cabinet and key government agencies that will review the activities of all departments and agencies to eliminate anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct. Now, you may remember that early on in the Biden administration, he put out a memo requiring them to, every government agency to accept transgender issue and DEI and all this stuff. So putting this out to every agency it shouldn't be controversial, although, the left. And then in this, he cites different things about the Biden administration bringing felony charges against nearly 24 pro-life Christians for praying outside abortion clinics, ignoring hundreds of attacks on Catholic churches, charities, and pro-life centers, the assertion that traditional Catholics were somehow domestic terrorists, the Department of Education threatening to repeal religious liberty protections on campus, and on and on and on. So that has been that is a new executive order that he's put out.
Ray, it is a reflection, I believe, of where Donald Trump is. And Alex McFarland, I know from time to time when we've talked about Donald Trump, is he a Christian? And Alex McFarland believes he is. He's talked to people who say that Donald Trump has prayed to accept Christ as Savior. I hope that is true. That is true. But I think there's also an underlining drive there. We need to bring fairness back. We do have a First Amendment in this country, which was greatly under attack when it came to Christians and traditional points of view, certainly during the Biden years. But also, I think it applies, and Donald Trump is aware of this, that Joe Biden was not a friend of the Jewish people. He was not a friend of Israel. He had very little to say about those protests in favor of the Palestinians and Hamas that broke out on college campuses in this country, which was just absolutely appalling. So we see another benefit of what has happened in the election of Donald Trump, that Christians are regaining some freedoms, and that Donald Trump is a friend of Israel.
You know, you raise a couple of interesting points there. Number one, the question about Mr. Trump and his personal relationship to the Lord. Look, I can't read his heart.
No,
like that's between Mr. Trump and the Lord, who knows his heart. This much is clear. He is clearly sympathetic to evangelical Christians and to the things we believe. We have a friend in the White House now, where we did not have a friend. In fact, we had an enemy, in a sense, when Joe Biden and certainly his surrounding advisors, the whole thing has completely changed. So I'm glad Donald Trump is there, because he now wants to stand with Israel, and he wants to remove anti-Christian bigotry. That's all to the good. And God bless Donald Trump for taking those steps.
Yeah. And Tony, we have to say, because evangelical Christians have been criticized, saying, the Republican Party has purchased our allegiance. I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, we have two parties, major parties in this country, and we look at what each party stands for. We kind of what the stuff we've been talking about the last 20 minutes. And evangelical Christians look at a particular party that says we believe in freedom of speech for Christians. We stand with Israel. And Christians who are Bible-believing Christians say to the other party, I know where they stand on these issues. What choice is there?
Yeah, that's right. The way where we're at right now is Christians who participate in our democratic process, as is their right as U.S. citizens, have two choices. And, I'm not going to go out and say that Republicans haven't caved in and given in to some of the issues that we very passionately support. They have. There's been some erosion there, but at a base level, Fred, what you're looking at are two choices. One party will continue to erode our rights under the Constitution, under the First Amendment of the Constitution, as Christians, to express freedom of religion, to express our religious beliefs and to live those out peaceably without persecution. And the other party, we see here with executive orders like this, are taking steps to ensure that those freedoms are restored and are protected going forward. So to me, the choice at a very basic level, if I want to continue to have the freedom to preach the gospel and to make choices that reflect my belief in Jesus Christ and in God's word, I have only one direction, to take.
Yeah.
I want to take us all, I think this might be the last thing we get to, but I want to take us all back to, about a year ago. And this is when the conservatives, Fox, and everybody was they had been noticing Joe Biden's decline for a while. This was Jake Tapper back then talking with somebody about this. This is Cut 13.
I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
you have
to watch somebody on stage search for
that's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses.
Well, Jake Tapper has a new book out today. It's called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Yeah. So maybe he has gotten his medical degree since then, or I don't know.
It's all come to light since the election.
That's
Steve.
right.
He had no idea.
Not a clue.
Ray, I think somebody once said reality is a great teacher.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And we saw that in spades.
Goodness.
You know, I just think the American people, a lot of people say it was the debate in June last year when the mainstream media, they knew the truth, but they could no longer deny it after that debate. And then, of course, it was the night of the long knives when Hollywood personnel and Barack Obama, that scene, Ray,
Yes.
Barack Obama, it was an L.A. fundraiser, I think. Barack Obama quietly and gently leading Biden off the stage. That's, you know, those scenes are what did it. Reality just hit the American public straight in the face.
Yeah, it's. I was cracking up when we were listening to that clip. I was cracking up because look, folks, TV and radio obviously is forever. So these TV personalities, these media personalities, they can't hide from things they've said before. And I mean, if ever there was a 180, we want to talk about 180s in the way Trump is governing. If ever there was a 180, that's Jake Tapper.
Yeah.
And his revelation, he must have been. It's like a Charles Dickens novel. You know, was he visited by three spirits and it revealed, you know, his revelation was that Joe Biden actually was in mental decline, you know, and now he's had a revelation. So
I tell you what, Jake Tapper, the ladies on The View, MSNBC, Joy Reid, who's, by the way, out there looking for work.
Yeah.
Right.
As of yesterday. I mean, these folks, I honestly do hope they re-enter reality now. And
wait a couple years until the election's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Tony, thanks you so much. Ray, as always, we appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Fred.
Enjoy your bike ride in those warm Kansas temperatures.
Will do.
All right, Steve
Yep.
and Brent and Chris, thank you so much. See you again soon. Bye for now.
Have you heard of the Freedom Trail in